Honduras is a country within the Central American region. It is washed by the Caribbean Sea. To its south is Nicaragua, to its southwest El Salvador, to its northwest Guatemala, and to the north of it Belize. So it is surrounded by other Caribbean nations. It is washed by the Caribbean Sea and so can be identified as Caribbean. It also shares similar history with being inhabited and conquered by Spain and then England, as well as a history of slavery and colonialism with both indigenous groups and Africans. A brief history of Honduras. Honduras was populated by multiple indigenous groups, each with their own language, the largest of which at the time was Lenca people who spoke the Lenca language. Most of the indigenous languages have the same name as the people and are easily identifiable. In 1502, Christopher Columbus landed in Honduras, however, and so began a shift in the language. In 1525, Spain began its conquest. In 1539, they succeeded after bitter struggles with the native populations and rivals to the Spanish power. In the 17th century, so this is long after being under Spain rule, the introduction of slaves through the Spanish. In the 17th century, the northern coast of Honduras fell to the British buccaneers, and the British protectorate established over the coast until 1860, while the Spanish concentrated on the inland area. So even to this day, English is spoken on islands near Honduras as part of the Honduras territory, as well as on the coast. So a lot of indigenous people speak their language as well as English, and a lot of the indigenous people inland speak Spanish as well as their indigenous languages. The British brought in their own slaves as well, so that creates a whole different language dynamic with Africans some speaking English, some speaking Spanish. In 1821, Honduras gains independence from Spain but becomes part of Mexico. So this is a new country that's formed between Honduras and Mexico, and eventually they join the United Provinces of Central America, which include Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Nicaragua. In 1840, Honduras becomes fully independent and is now their own nation with their differing cultural groups and different languages.
We know the size of a language by the size of the population of its L1 speakers. The table being observed is an adaptation of the Lewis, Gary, and Charles 2013 study of languages of Honduras. The results displayed are the exact results extracted from the original table they created, displaying the distribution of languages by population of L1 speakers. It summarizes the language size of the 10 different languages of Honduras using population range, the number of languages in each range, and their specific number of speakers. Starting from the first population range, 1 million to 9 million and above, there exists only one living language in this category, and it is namely Spanish. Spanish has a population of 7 million in Honduras, the largest population size. When we move to the second category, 10,000 to 99,000 and above, there lies 3 languages. Garifuna being the predominant indigenous language in Honduras, having a population size of 98,000 and 100 of the speakers being monolingual. Second in that category is English, having 31,500 in Honduras and 22,500 in the Bay Islands. And the third in that category is Mosquito with 29,000 in Honduras. In the third population range, 100 to 999 speakers, we have Peck with 990 speakers. However, the ethnic population far outweighs the language size, as its ethnic population is 2,950. Mayangna is the second in that category with 700 speakers in Honduras, and their ethnic population is 1,030. Tol has 350 speakers in Honduras, and the ethnic population is 590. There are also 19,000 ethnic Tolpan in the Department of Yoro. We move to the fourth category of 10 to 99 with only one living language, and that is Courtnie with 10 speakers in Honduras. Then we have our fifth population range, 0, with one living language, which is Lenca. It has no known L1 speakers, some semi-speakers, but its ethnic population is 100,000. And finally, we have the unknown population range with Honduras Sign Language. We can observe that the trend for the smaller population range is that the language size is not indicative of the ethnic population. For the most case, what we're seeing with the indigenous languages is that the ethnic population far outweighs the language size, which means there is a significant amount of people belonging to the ethnic groups that do not use their ethnic languages. Subsequent to that, we can deduce reason as to why language status mirrors language population, as we will see, because a language can only develop and increase its status when it increases in usage. The status of a language speaks to the position of that language within a specific territory based on its overall development and preservation of the language. The inverted pyramid displayed captures the status of the languages existing within Honduras based on the assessment done using the expanded graded intergenerational disruption scale, otherwise called EGIDS. It consists of 13 levels where each higher number indicates greater level of disruption to the passing on of languages between generations. So what it means is that for every language in this inverted pyramid, the number that it is ascribed by the EGID level will tell us the level of disruption that occurred through the passing on of that language in subsequent generations. So the higher the number, the greater the disruption of that process of passing on the language from generation to generation. It considers factors such as language population, language usage, and language development. Therefore, in descending order, at the top of the scale, with the highest, not the greatest number, but the highest EGID level of 1, which is the national level, we have Spanish. Spanish is the statutory national language. A statutory language is one that has legal documentation such as the Constitution, the language policy, or other documents of that nature which specifies the function of that language. So for Honduras, Spanish as the statutory national language means that it has been mandated by law for Spanish to be used for business of the national government. And as it says national, meaning it is the language of national identity. Spanish in terms of development, it is fully developed with writings such as the Bible, the Braille and the Latin script, and it also has the position of primary usage. We move to the Aegis level 5. Now, level 5 is divided into two different subdivisions, developing and dispersed. Now, in level 5, we have Garifuna with 100 monolingual speakers, and it is used in all domains. There's an observation of language shift occurring in some villages where persons are shifting from Garifuna to Spanish. However, it has seen mostly positive attitudes. In terms of language development, it has a 1 to 5% literacy rate among L1 speakers and 5 to 15% among L2s. There are radio programs in Garifuna, dictionary, grammar, Bible, and the Latin script. Second in the same category, Aegis level 5 developing, is Honduras Sign Language. It has significant language development with at least 12 institutions offering primary education for the Deaf Society of Honduras. Third, there is Mayana with language use at all ages. And in terms of language development, it shows a literacy rate of 10 to 30% in L1 speakers. There is also literature such as a dictionary, Bible, and the Latin script. Then we have Mosquito, which also has language use at all ages, showing literacy rates of 1 to 10% among L1 speakers and 5 to 25% among L2s. Its literature includes Bible and Latin script. Tull is used at all ages as well, with literacy rate of 5 to 10% among L1 speakers and 5 to 15% among L2s. It has resources including the dictionary, the New Testament of the Bible, and the Latin script. Now we move over to the other division of level 5, which is the dispersed. And this means that the language is fully developed in its home country, so that language users in a different country can have access to its resources. The language in this subdivision is English. As we know, English is fully developed with resources such as the Bible, writing such as Braille script, the Deseret alphabet, the Latin script, and it also has primary usage. We move to level 8A, as level 8 is divided into A and B, and level 8A is characterized as moribund. Now, moribund means that the only active users remaining are members of the grandparents' generation and older. So it's only the very older generation that are still using PEC. Language use is insignificant, but it is spoken more in specific locations, for example, Agua Amarilla and La Laguna, and by older adults. So even in those areas, it is really by the older adults. It is experiencing a language shift to Spanish. For 8B, which is nearly extinct, which means pretty much the same as moribund, but alongside that, it has little opportunity for the use of the language. So the only active users are the members of the grandparent generation and older, and alongside that, there is very little opportunity for the use of the language. It has some amount of language development with the existence of dictionary, grammar, the New Testament section of the Bible, and the Latin script. So even with all of this development, with little opportunity to use the language, only the literature is what is sustaining or keeping this language alive. And finally, at level 9, which is dormant, EGID's level 9, and dormant by EGID's assessment is that the language just serves as a reminder of heritage identity, but no one really has the proficiency to use it. And the language in that level is Lenka. It has no known L1 speakers and some semi-speakers.
Language and culture. Language is always an integral part of culture. Honduras, with its many languages, is rich with cultural diversity. The most significant linguistic impact on culture is the level of celebration that surrounds the Garifuna.
Garifuna are a unique group of people. They are the only descendants of Africans in the Western Hemisphere that were not subjected to slavery. They are an indigenous group, as well as they are Black Africans. So it's an interesting culture. You can see in the pictures them partaking in their music, their dance, their specific clothing. They have their own language, also called Garifuna. Now we're going to learn a little bit more about this unique group of people. You may also hear them being referred to as Garinagu or Garinagu people. This is a plural term. Garifuna refers to one person or the language, but the terms are used interchangeably today. They are originally from St. Vincent and are a mixture of indigenous Carib, Taino, and Afrikaans. The Carib came to the island of St. Vincent, met upon the group of Taino, and killed off the men, then intermarrying with the Taino women and having offspring. After that, Africans came into the mix through two different theories. One, that they were shipwrecked on the coast of St. Vincent as from a ship that was destined for slavery in the Caribbean, and sought refuge with this group of indigenous people and were then able to intermarry and have children. However, another theory, however, is that the Africans were travelers who were there from long before the Europeans ever came to the Caribbean in around circa the 13th century. They met upon this group of indigenous people, stayed, intermarried, and had offspring, and so created this unique group of people that was once referred to as Black Caribs, but they have identified themselves as Garifuna so as to set an identity for themselves within a different culture that doesn't exist elsewhere. They were exiled to the Honduran coast in the 18th century by the Europeans once they reached St. Vincent. The Garifuna resisted slavery for many years, around 40 years. They were able to resist slavery, but with new technologies and the development of the cannon, the Europeans eventually managed to exile them to the Honduran coast. First, they went to smaller islands near Honduras, including Roatan, and they lost a lot of their people. 5,000 people traveled from St. Vincent to Roatan, and only 2,000, once they were exiled again from those islands to Honduras, there was only 2,000 of them left. Today, however, they populate Guatemala, Nicaragua, Belize, the US, and Honduras, where they are the third largest minority or indigenous community in Honduras, with 43,111 people. So the Garinafu of today influence a lot of the language attitudes that exist within Honduras. Garifuna activists fight for their culture, their history, and their land rights against a government that disputes their status as a people. Because the Garifuna inhabit lands generally near the coast, and this is prime real estate for tourism. The government and criminal entities are constantly after the land that they have inherited as an indigenous group. We know that indigenous rights all over the world has always been trampled upon in order to gain their land. But the Garifuna people, they fight back, even though Honduras is one of the most dangerous places in the world to be a land rights activist or an environmental activist. They fight for that land space because it is integral to their culture. They have evening time songs and drumming that they sit around their fire to do within their coastal lands. Mass migration to the US is another issue that threatens the preservation of their culture and their population. They migrate to alleviate poverty, as there aren't many opportunities in Honduras to Garifuna people because of racism. They are black in a largely mestizo country. There aren't that many opportunities for jobs. It's a third world country as well. They migrate in order to be able to send back money to their family, just as Jamaicans do. We send back money, but we're also sending back a sort of different culture, and the same is happening to the Garifuna people. Once they migrate, they tend to assimilate into American popular culture, and it's a lot easier for them to survive if they speak English, if they assimilate into hip hop music and ignore their heritage, their specific punta music and dance. Most people don't even know what Garifuna is, and so they are just referred to as African Americans once they migrate. That's just the culture of America. Once you migrate, you tend to have to just be an American, and your specific culture it's easier for you to assimilate it's easier for you to survive rather if you assimilate, unless you come from a culture that people already know of. So isolated populations exist around the world because of this migration, this history of migration. Because if you look at back when they were exiled from St. Vincent to the islands outside of Honduras, and then exiled again to Honduras and the coast of Belize, the coast of Honduras and the coast of Belize, and then later on migrating to other countries. The population is very dispersed, and so it's harder to hold on to cultural norms, as their culture is passed on word to mouth, from mouth to mouth, and it's also harder to practice the language and things like that. So Garifuna people feel isolated within their country of Honduras, where there is a disconnect between their culture and the present one. They are not taught about their history or culture in school, so it feels as if you have like this secret. One woman describes it as feeling isolated within your own country, because there's the larger culture of Spanish and Spanish speakers and mestizo people that you have to engage with to survive, but you have your own culture that you kind of have to keep you have to downplay your own culture and try to assimilate with the language that is official and more widely spoken. And the same thing happens once they migrate. They have to assimilate with the English and be a part of the group that is the more dominant in that society. As I said before, the heritage, culture, and language are passed down mostly orally. So there isn't much written accounts of their language or heritage or culture, and they're not taught it in schools. And so the only way to gain it is to be with your people and hear it from the older generations, which is not always the case, as I said before, because of the isolated populations. Even though they form a sort of community wherever they go, it's still less people and less as they migrate more and more. The heritage, culture, and language are kept by the dying older population, in particular because a lot of the younger generation, and I'm not talking about our generation, the generation before that, so their parents did not pass it down as well as the grandparents did. So the grandparents are the ones that are holding on to the culture, able to pass down the language, and the music in particular is only, say, one old woman in the village would know this particular song, but the language is just not passed down. The grandparents know it, the parents may know it, but they didn't pass it on to their children. And it's only now that they're trying to renew efforts of passing it down. So the grandparents are now speaking to the children, or generation time period are now looking to their grandparents to learn, because they realize that their parents did not teach it to them. They didn't realize the gap that was missing until now that they're older and they're seeing the culture, and they're just realizing, I don't know the language, I have to relearn now as an adult, as opposed to if my parents had taught me when I was younger. The language is derived from several Bantu languages: Arawak, Carib, Spanish, French, and English, and it represents their rich history and cultural diversity. In 2001, UNESCO declared Garifuna culture a masterpiece of oral and intangible heritage of humanity. So this helps with the preservation a little bit more, being recognized by a world organization as a specific history that needs to be preserved. Positive developments have occurred in Honduras, where the authorities have increasingly created national programs for Garifuna and other indigenous people.
The Punta Gorda Festival. People from all over the country get together on the island of Roatan, specifically in Punta Gorda, to celebrate a special day for the Garifuna annually. It serves to commemorate the day in which 4,000 Garifuna settled on the island. It should also be noted that there is a National Garifuna Festival held in November, and the Punta Gorda Festival is held on April 12th. The festival includes animated theatrical performances, music, drinking, food, and dancing, all of which are indigenous to the Garifuna. The performances are performed by the locals, and the music, the names of the food, are all in Garifuna language. Let's talk about the food. A must-have at the Punta Gorda Festival is machuca. Machuca is a coconut-based soup with seafood and plantains. The plantains are specially smashed in a mortero and made into a ball to be added to the soup. Your meal is not complete unless you've had a glass of guifiti, a specially made alcoholic beverage. It is made with rum, fruits, and herbs. Though this may be the main course, other meals to find on the table include cassava bread, buns, rice, and banana bread. Garifuna music and dance. The festival is not complete without music. The music of the Garifuna is called punta. Punta is dominated by the drums, but also includes the conch shell and the maracas. While the band plays, traditional Garifuna songs are sung, and punta dance is performed. Punta music is also very popular throughout Honduras. One popular singer is Aurelio Martinez. He is also a cultural ambassador for Garifuna.
danaro, tora ni kabanane, lao mora bule adara familio. Palaba danaro, tora ni kabanane, lao mora bule adara familio. Aw ayano ayatena, amana mulena, ayano ayatena, amana mulena.
Spanish and English in culture. As the official language of Honduras, Spanish has the largest body of speakers. As is expected as the official language, television and majority of theatrical work produced in Honduras is done in Spanish and sometimes English. Traditional dress by the country is also Hispanic. It is interesting to note that this movie, A Place in the Caribbean, was shot on the island of Roatan, which is a Garifuna populated, but the languages used were Spanish and English. Mosquito language and culture. Mosquito, as the name suggests, is spoken by the Mosquito people. They also speak Spanish and English, but prefer English to Spanish due to the positive historical attitudes associated with Britain. There are 3 distinguishable dialects belonging to the Mosquito of eastern Nicaragua, those living along the Rio Coco, and those of eastern Honduras. Mosquito has been influenced by the grammar and vocabulary of West African languages, as well as Spanish, English, and German. In areas where Mosquito is spoken, it has been adopted as a language of the Moravian Church, in both spoken and written forms. Mosquito is written in the Bible, hymn books, and other religious texts. Mosquito also use music and song in all areas of life, including health. They have songs sung specifically for healing. Language and education. As the official language of Honduras, most educational institutions use Spanish as a language. However, let's talk about the other languages of the country and how they are treated, specifically Mosquito, Garifuna, and English. As Spanish ensures the economic and political and social survival of the people, most Garifuna people focus on learning how to speak, write, and read these languages, while neglecting their own language. As a result, most Garifuna people cannot write or read the words of their language because there were no schools in most of the communities that taught them how to read and write. Although the Mosquito are the second largest indigenous group in Honduras, their literacy rates are very low. Though there are government schools in larger villages, Spanish is taught after the third grade, which leaves no room for the Mosquito language. Schools are understaffed and undersupplied, with as many as 80 pupils per classroom. As a result, most Mosquito people, are never enrolled in school from an early age, and they focus on their way of life, which includes agriculture and fishing. As it relates to English, there are approximately 12 institutions in Honduras that teach English as a second language. The push for English is geared towards ensuring a better future for the children, as English is the lingua franca.